Sam Shaw here from Wall Street Mastermind. I am here with another client interview for you guys today. I'm excited to have Allison on today so that we can just talk about her recruiting process. Allison started working with us, back in, when did you start? Back in October, I guess, of last year. We're in May now. And so early on in sophomore year, I guess. And she just finished her recruiting process and ended up having a very successful outcome. And I wanted to get her on here to just share some advice with you guys and just talk about her experience, and hopefully you guys can benefit from it. So, Allison, thank you so much for taking the time to come on here to talk to us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the introduction, Sam. I guess just a little bit more about myself. I'm a sophomore at Cornell studying industrial and labor relations, which is like not necessarily like a finance, very businessy kind of major. Kind of just more focuses on like law, the workplace, and has aspects of business in it. And so I came from that kind of background, but I've always been interested in business. I'm also from New York City, and yeah, I'm just really stoked to be on here.
Awesome. Thanks for that intro. So I guess let's go all the way back to the beginning. You started working with us towards the end of October. Had you already been preparing for recruiting prior to coming to Wall Street Mastermind? Like, did you already know, like, how long had you already known at that point that you wanted to do investment banking, and how much had you already done on your own? Can we maybe there?
Yeah, of course. So I guess like honestly, I was a little bit unsure about investment banking just because, because I go to Cornell, everyone's like very business focused if you're in those kind of circles, and it's like more of a focus on consulting, investment banking, and like that kind of aspect, even like a little bit of venture capital, things like that. So I knew what investment banking was, and I knew like the various areas of finance, but honestly, I did not think that I had like the ability to, become an investment banker, because generally it's like a male dominated field. Everyone seems like very, I guess, like aggressive and like kind of in that hard culture. And it just seemed hard to break into that. And so before coming to Wall Street Mastermind, I just had that kind of idea. I wasn't really sure if I totally wanted to pursue it, and like didn't think I had the guts to do it. But then after talking to various people within the program, I was actually like more convinced, and I thought that it would be able to help me, in my further pursuits, no matter like if I did investment banking or not.
Okay, interesting. So you're almost like a little bit, you weren't like 100% confident that you could make it into banking, and also whether this is going to be the right fit for you, just given the culture of banking, and it's not something that you're super familiar and comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then like you schedule the call, you talk to us, and then given you weren't super certain about banking, like what was it that, were you like, was this one of those things where, okay, you learned about the program and you're like, yeah, I got to do this, and you knew immediately? Or was it like, ooh, I'm not sure about this, I don't know if it's right for me, kind of on the fence? Like, how was that process for you, like when you were considering joining but you haven't quite joined yet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say I was more on the latter half, where I, was like aware of everything. I was kind of just weighing the options. I think like one thing I really enjoyed, and like I'm still grateful for this day, is that the person on the Wall Street Mastermind team who reached out to me, her name's Jen, and she came from like a very similar background to myself, where she's like an Asian female. She's not in an exactly like finance background where she's learned about like business her whole life. And I was kind of just like opening up to her about like my insecurities about joining banking, like kind of even going for the process and like putting myself out there. And she was able to like relate really well. And so I think that kind of just lucked out in terms of like having her as like kind of like the consultant, kind of like figuring out, what I can best do to like position myself for banking. And then I guess like one of the main things I was unsure about was kind of like if it was like worth everything. Like if I do make this investment, am I going to actually like put myself out there, like commit myself to learning? Because even if you do make the investment, it's not all about like, oh, now everything's handed to you on a platter.
Right.
You still have to like work for it and stuff. And so that was one of my insecurities, I guess. But then she was able to kind of like assure me about, like I guess even like the process, how it went, like the process, like the recruiting timeline, sorry. And so I think that was able to like sway me a lot more. And then after thinking about it for a while, I also realized that like, even if I wasn't successful in like banking itself, it would still give me valuable skills for like school clubs, interviewing, just like general like networking and stuff.
Right. Got it. Okay. That's a really good point. So you saw this as obviously the primary goal is to get into banking if you invest in a program like this. But worst case scenario, you just saw it as an investment in yourself, really learning some life skills and things that are going to be useful for the rest of your career, regardless of whether you go into banking or not. Like that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
how you justify it, I guess. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense. And that's cool. I mean, I know that you initially talked to Jen, but I didn't know about what you just said, which is, how much she kind of talked to you and reassured you and things like that. I mean, Jen's one of the nicest people I know, so I can totally see her doing that. And you're right; you guys do come from very similar backgrounds, which is cool. And I guess now you guys will be going to the same firm, which is
Yeah.
extra cool. So, um, okay, so then you came into the program in October, and then like, what happened from there? Like, what happened once you came into the program? Was it what you expected, or was it like pretty different? Or just talk to us a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say it was like pretty much what I expected. It was just like a lot faster than I thought. Because I think that like, different aspects of the program, such as like office hours, you can only go to those for like the first 8 weeks or so of like, your program. And I felt like I did not really have a sense of urgency within like maybe like all of fall to winter. And so I was kind of just like, I had the resources there, I just didn't really use them that much. And I guess like the structure was kind of what I expected, like watching videos and whatnot, kind of talking with others within the Slack group, I thought was really helpful. And then like also going to office hours. I would say like my take on recruiting didn't really pick up until like all the diversity programs started coming out. Like there was a lot in February or so, like that was the first wave. And so at that point I was like, like I need to get on this. I'm kind of feeling behind, like lacking a little bit. And then also with, there was this connection I had who's a managing director at PJT, and he was kind of telling me more about like his specific firm and his program. And then I realized that like instead of trying to go for all the banks, I should just like focus on like specific ones that I actually feel like I have a connection to, can relate with, like have like fit with the culture and whatnot. So then I guess like after those two things together, like the programs, the diversity programs all being released, and then also talking with people who are actually in the industry and like having guidance on like the process and like the schedule, I guess, from them, it was a lot more helpful. And I started to, pick up speed and everything.
Got it. So you joined in late October, but you were probably busy with school and got sidetracked a bit and just kind of put this on the back burner. But then in
Mm-hmm.
February, started picking things back up again. And then so like, what happened between February and like April? Because I think you got your offer in April, right?
Mm-hmm. I got it in like late March.
Late March. Okay, so it was
Mm-hmm.
like less than a 2 month period where you're really actively recruiting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess like knowing the four kind of modules that like Wall Street Mastermind sets up, it's like, the resume and like cover letter kind of stuff, the networking, the behaviorals, and then the technicals. And so I felt like I had mostly like the resume stuff down. Like I kind of knew how to network with people. It was just all about like reaching out to them. But then for the behaviorals and the technicals, I would say like behaviorals, I had like a general idea, but I wasn't really like sure on how to like structure my answers. And then for the technicals, I had no idea at all about any of it. So then I guess like in that 2 month period, I was mostly like networking for the most part, until I actually like got some offers and whatnot. And then I just like crammed all of the technicals in like a maybe like 1 to 2 week time span, through like the accelerated process. And it was actually like pretty successful. I think like I am more focused. I think like knowing more about like the industry or the division I was interviewing for, I'm more focused on like specific aspects of the technicals, and like knowing more of like the general stuff about everything instead of like not knowing too much and only knowing about like say M&As. And then I guess like through there, I just kind of lucked out, I feel like, just like having those connections, like actually building relationships with them, and then also like having the drive to like quickly, cram in what I didn't know towards the end.
Yeah. Okay. So you talked about a lot of stuff there on the behavioral side. Let's go one by one, through a couple of these things. So on the behavioral side, you had a general idea coming in, but you weren't sure how to structure your answers. I think that's what you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like, how exactly did this help? Like, what was the difference between doing what you did in Wall Street Mastermind versus what you could have just done on your own?
Yeah, I think one key thing is having people to like review your answers, because like they kind of give you most of the behavioral questions you'd be asked, and then giving like a kind of guide to answer them, like what you should be mentioning, etc. So being able to have like, draft them on your own, watch Sam, of course, like edit other people's behaviorals, it was a lot more helpful than like, just creating them on my own and like not knowing if they were actually good answers or like what people are looking for. So I think like having that personalized, like, I guess having that personalized like feedback for yourself was really helpful. And then I think like even having just like a guide, like using the document to like write out all your answers, review them, etc. Like I recall like during my actual interviews, I was like thinking of like the yellow highlighted page and like the behavioral questions and like trying to like hit on all the points and stuff. And like, of course, it's not exactly what you've written down, but kind of like being able to practice them and like know them a lot better, and having that like kind of people to back you up and like tell you like this is what we are looking for, this is like not exactly it, is like very reassuring.
So basically, it get the biggest difference is having that feedback, like versus if you come up with your answers on your own and you don't get any feedback, you're kind of just hoping for the best, and you're not really sure if what you prepared is what the bankers actually want to hear. Versus in this case, you've gotten the feedback from actual bankers, and we actually gone through all your answers line by line and um, made the edits and giving you feedback on it. So now you're going to the interview feeling a lot more confident that hey, my answers are what they're supposed to be, and the rest of it just comes down to execution and actually delivering the answer uh, in a way that is
Mhm.
confident. I guess is that kind of
Yeah.
how it works?
Yeah,
Okay.
I just have like one more thing I want to say, I guess, because this was also like one of my worries coming into the program, because of course there's a lot of upperclassmen at Cornell who have already like done the recruiting process and whatnot and have like gone through all of it. So I was thinking to myself, like, why can't I just like reach out to them and ask them for help and stuff? And I
Yeah.
think it was you, Sam, or someone else who said this, but like I think at like Wall Street Mastermind, like of course the clients are like the main priority, because of course upperclassmen will help you, but they don't have the same knowledge of like looking through a lot of students' answers, and like, maybe they'll help you, maybe they'll help like one other person, but that's like it. And also they're not always there at like your disposal, like they have a life too, things like that. And so kind of just like having that direct line of contact with people who actually have experience already was really helpful as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great point that you bring up. Look, we tell all of our clients you should leverage your upperclassmen as much as possible. It's not like, hey, if you come into Wall Street Mastermind, then don't talk to your upperclassmen at all, right? Like at the end of the day, it's such a competitive process. You should leverage all the resources you have at your disposal. There's no conflict there, but I think the biggest difference, like you said, with getting help from Wall Street Mastermind versus getting help from your upperclassmen is that one is the experience, the level of experience from the coaches that are helping you is different. Like we've worked with almost 400 students at this point. Your upperclassman has probably gone through the recruiting process one time on their own, and then maybe helped less than a handful of people after that, right? And so a lot of this comes down to experience, especially something as subjective as, hey, what should you say in your behavioral interview answers? Like, unless you've been a banker and you've interviewed a bunch of students, it's really hard to say like whether your opinion is the right opinion, right? Because at the end of the day, it's just your opinion. The other thing is like we don't actually just base it on like Sam's personal opinion because I'm not like I'm not like the investment banking god or something, right? Like really, we try to be data driven with our approach. Meaning, again, if we've seen behavioral answers from almost 400 different students, that's a pretty large sample size. And then we've also, furthermore, seen where these students ended up, who got into Goldman Sachs versus Morgan Stanley versus JP Morgan versus PJT, Evercore, Centerview, blah, 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 blah. We've placed clients at this point into every single bulge bracket and elite boutique bank. And so we can do some pattern recognition around what's the commonality between all the most successful students. And that's how we come up with the frameworks that you're referring to, which is you said, hey, there's a questionnaire, there's a guide, or we tell you like, hey, these are the things that they're kind of looking for. That's not guesswork, right? It's actually based on data that we have on what's working and what's not, right? So I think that's one big difference. And the second thing you said is just like you said, responsiveness and, you know, being able to get support on demand anytime you need, right? Like we're one Slack message away versus, I mean, imagine having to bug an upperclassman with every little question. Like the types of questions that we get from our clients is like, that's not the type of stuff that you would typically go bug your friends because you don't want to be that annoying person. Like, oh my God, it's Allison again. Like, whereas for us, it's our job to help you. And so we don't mind doing that. In fact, we love what we do, right? So it's a totally different feeling, just not having to feel bad when you have to go ask someone for help because that's what they're there to do. That's what they're supposed to do, right? So I'm really glad you brought that up. It's a great point. But so that's on the behavioral side. On the technical side, I think the really interesting thing you mentioned is like you crammed everything in just 1 or 2 weeks. So like, how many hours of work was that roughly, if you had to kind of quantify it?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, like I had schoolwork at the same time, but I was just like doing the very bare minimum or like not really doing the schoolwork, and like every free moment I was just like, oh, let me just watch Sam's videos. I watched yours on like 2.0 or like 2.3 speed because I feel like generally at first you try to like explain it pretty slowly to everyone, but I was like, I don't have time, like speed up.
Yeah.
But it was like pretty useful, honestly. Like I think like watching a lot of the overview videos, like just having a better idea of it, and then like going through the videos, I guess like with like the 3 statements and stuff, I felt like I kind of knew that through like one class that I took on like financial accounting. But for things I didn't really understand, like the internal rate of return or like things like that, I would just like look that up separately on like Investopedia. But I think like the most helpful thing out of like all the technicals, like this was even going back to before I like started in the program, and I was like telling Jen, was that like I just like don't know what to study because there's like so many topics. I don't really know what's like comprehensive of like the topics that we're supposed to know, or like what order you're supposed to know them in. And so I think like having like these videos at your disposal, or like also having people asking like the same questions in like the Slack chat was really helpful, just because like in a way like everything was there for you to use. You just had to like, you know, put the time in and like actually use them. And so that's kind of what I did when I crammed everything in.
Yeah. I mean, if it was over 1 or 2 weeks and you're doing this part-time on top of school and everything else, I gotta imagine it couldn't have been more than 20 hours in total.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's the thing on the technicals is like people are like, oh well, everything you need to know is already online. Everything you need to know, you can just Google it. I mean, there's no way you're gonna be. It's technically true, at least on the technical side of things. I don't think it's true on the behaviorals. No amount of Googling is gonna tell you what your behavioral answer should be, right? But at least not something that's personalized to you. On the technical side, yeah, all the concepts are out there, but realistically, if you're short on time, and let's be honest, nowadays, with the way the investment banking recruiting timeline works, everybody is always short on time. I've never met a single student that comes to me and is like, oh, I have so much time to prepare for banking recruiting, like said no one ever, right? And so you're always short on time. And so the name of the game is efficiency when it comes to your technical prep. Like I know people that literally spend over 200 hours trying to learn technicals before they join Wall Street Mastermind, and they come in, they're like, oh, I did all that in 20 hours after I joined. It's like, how much time could I have saved if I had just done this from the first place? And the other 180 hours I could have spent networking and getting more referrals, or getting better grades in school, or even just having more time with my friends, like having a social, like whatever it is, like time is valuable, right? And so the fact that you were able to cram everything in 1 or 2 weeks and still be able to pass your interviews, I mean, that's pretty amazing accomplishment, right? So that's pretty cool. I guess, you know, you talked about the behaviorals, you talked about technical interviews. Obviously, you were also doing a lot of networking at the same time. You said, oh, you spend most of your time networking, right? How did you find like the networking trainings that you had in the Wall Street Mastermind program? Like, was it helpful? Was it not helpful? Did it like what would you say you learned from that?
I would say like just with general networking, I felt like I knew how it was, you know, like ask questions about their day-to-day, whatnot. I think like the helpful thing for me within the training modules was like the referral piece, because I didn't even know you're supposed to get referrals coming in, or like, you know, how helpful those would be, and like having people on your side. And so then like after watching that and like asking for the ask in like a nice way, or having like more connections and whatnot, like that's, I think that was able to help me a lot. But I think like just with my general networking process, like I know that you're supposed to have like referrals at like every place you apply to and whatnot, as like Wall Street Mastermind says. But I think like for the diversity programs, like the ones that I was like most successful with, I had like actually talked to people at the firm, like understood their culture instead of like just shooting off an application. And I think that that's like what really helped me stand out, especially like at PJT, because it's so small. Like apparently the divisions are very small and like there's not that many people. So like even if you talk to like, you know, 5 people and like they pass you on to other analysts and like other associates and whatnot, like that was really helpful. So I think that's kind of what made me stand apart from like other applicants who are, you know, also well prepared in terms of like technicals and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think PJT has like 700 employees or something like that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's quite small compared to a lot of the bulge bracket banks. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely a very tight knit culture there, I'm sure. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I guess you mentioned like for the diversity programs that you went to, like, so ultimately, were you going to like multiple diversity programs, or like aside from PJT, like who else were you kind of
Mm-hmm.
in the process with?
Yeah. So like I started applying to the diversity programs in like December, but like not really paying them like much mind. Like I know the early ones were like BlackRock or like RBC, things like that. But then after like talking or like doing more of the networking and stuff, I was also able to go to like Jeffries in San Francisco for their tech team. And like that one was useful because there was a lot of like senior leaders who are also women there. I think I went to the Wells Fargo one and then the BlackRock one. And like those were varying varying like levels of helpfulness and whatnot, but I think like the PJT definitely was like the most helpful because I already knew people there beforehand. Like I actually saw them in like the breakout rooms and stuff, and like was able to talk to other analysts that I met there afterwards and like prepare for the interview, and like the whole process is very accelerated. So
Got it. Got it. Okay. Very cool. So ultimately, it sounds like, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious at this point who you took the offer from, but I guess, do you want to tell people where you got the offer from? I think people probably have
yeah.
figured it out at this point, but
Yeah, I got an offer from PJT in like their secondaries division, which is like more on the private equity side, but they're
yeah,
still like modeling and like basic, you know, like waterfall model, etc. But yeah, I was very happy about it. And I felt like the culture was really good at the entire firm. And then I fit in really well with like everyone in that division the most.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I know you were super excited when you got the offer, and so obviously we were super excited for you as well. I guess one last question for you then, like looking back now that you come out on the other side of this very grueling process. Um, if you were to look back on back when you were first starting, okay, because a lot of people that are probably listening to this now, they're probably where you were, 6 months ago, 7 months ago, right? They're just starting to embark on their investment banking recruiting journey. What's one piece of advice that you want to give them, or what's one piece of advice that you wish someone had told you back when you were first starting that, maybe would have made your life a lot easier, or would have made this process a lot less painful? Like, do you have anything like that that you want to tell people?
Yeah. First, I would say the process was like not necessarily painful for me because, you know, I just like got the offer, I took it, and I was like very happy with it. And it was like one of those exploding offers where, you know, they give you like a set amount of time to take it. But I was really happy with it just because of like the fit and everything. But I would say one piece of advice that like I wish I knew, you know, even like back in October, and for like people who are also going into the process, is kind of like I feel like in a way people have like all the resources in front of them, like especially if you join Wall Street Mastermind, like everything's there for you to like use, and like you have like these office hours, for example, which like I just never took advantage of that much, where you're like talking to people like live, in like a very small group generally. And so I never really took advantage of those because I was still back in like the networking module or like the resume module, and like going over things like that, which of course is like still useful. But, you know, like I wish I was like more motivated in a way to like, you know, do the technicals, like try to start everything at the same time, like pay this process the most mind, because I was still like, you know, doing schoolwork and everything. Like of course like grades are important and whatnot, but I feel like your grades can be improved any semester you want versus like, you only have one chance at recruiting in a way, unless you're going for full time. So this is like one of the more important things, I would say. So kind of just like being able to like use I guess like the resources around you and like take advantage of like what you sign up for and like what you pay for and like get to work right away. I guess like something that I would offer other people.
Yeah. So long story short, like don't procrastinate, basically.
Yeah.
That's like, I feel like, I mean, it's good advice. I've been there. I was a college student, and it's just, there's so much going on. It's easy to put things off until you're really back against the wall, and it's now or never, and then that's when you kind of really do. It's like studying for final exams, right?
Yeah.
Like we all know what that's like, and so no, that's a great piece of advice, though. So, look, guys, I think if you're listening to this and you're just starting out in your recruiting process, maybe you're kind of feeling how Allison was feeling before, which is, there's all this information out there, there's all these resources, but you're not really sure like where to start, and you're not really sure, like maybe you have a high level idea of some of the things you need to do, like, oh, I have a general idea of what the behavioral questions are going to be, but I don't really know how to structure my answers, right? Or, I know I need to know the technicals, but I have no idea what they're going to ask me. I have no idea what the concepts are. Or I know I need to network, but I don't know how to actually turn those networking conversations into actual referrals. Like whatever it may be, like if you're just feeling a little bit lost or not completely confident, you just need that extra bit of guidance to really help you. I mean, you still got to do the work, like Allison said, like nothing's going to be handed to you on a silver platter. But if you're willing to do the work, all you're lacking is that extra guidance. Then we're here for you, right? And so if that's you, I want to encourage you to book a free strategy session with our team. You can do that by going to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street's abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And someone on our team will hop on with you and just talk to you about your situation and learn more about what it is that you're trying to accomplish, what kind of banks do you want to go to, what challenges are you currently having. Maybe you're having some doubts about whether this is the right fit for you. This is that conversation that I also mentioned where she got to talk to Jen and it was really helpful. It's the same thing. We do that with everybody. Not everyone's going to end up joining our program. We also can't work with everyone because we have a limited amount of time and bandwidth, and our team is pretty small. But at a minimum, we'll just give you advice on what we think you should do. And ultimately, if it's a good fit and we decide to work together, that's great. If not, you at least walk away with some, just new perspective and things that you can maybe even go out and implement on your own, right? So if that sounds good to you, we would love to talk to you. Book a call with us, and we'll help you as much as we can. So with that said, Allison, I want to thank you again for taking the time to hop on. I know it's final season. I know you got a bunch of papers to write, and so definitely appreciate you coming out here to share your advice with people. And again, huge congrats on the offer that you got. I know you're super happy with it, and we're super happy for you. And PJT is a great firm, and now you can go hopefully go be coworkers with Jen, which is awesome. And you guys can be I don't know, investment banking sisters or something.
Yeah,
but
no
huge
problem.
congrats. And obviously you earned it, and it's well deserved, and I look forward to seeing all of your success.
Thank you so much. And for everyone else, good luck on your process.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Well, that'll be it for this episode. And thank you guys for tuning in. And we'll be back with more of these for you in the near future. All right. Talk soon.